Hello everybody, just wanted to do a review of my new kiln. There aren't really too many videos out there for L&L kilns, so thought it might be helpful to make one of the new kiln I got. I've done a bisque fire and a glaze fire now, so at this point I have a better idea of how to use the kiln and just the transition from a manual kiln to an automated kiln is kind of interesting because there's definitely a learning curve to it. My old kiln is still over there. There it is. You can see that's a pretty big difference. So this this new L&L kiln is 7 cubic feet. So it's actually pretty large. Can't even get it in the frame here. It is actually 3 zones inside. So let's open it up. It has 3 thermocouples in it. You can see there. And they are covered. So, these seem like really minor details, but when you go to use the kiln, things like that actually end up, making a difference. So when you have 3 thermocouples, there's 3 zones, and what it does, we'll go to the readout here. It's in idle mode. It says TC2 thermocouple 2, so it actually gives you a readout of, I guess, thermocouple 2, even though I thought what it was is an average of all 3 of them. So it becomes important because when you do the firing, you kind of have to figure out how to do, particularly a glaze firing. You know, if you're used to doing a cone 5 or a cone 6 or whatever it is, you kind of are going to have a learning curve to it. So what I ended up doing for the glaze fire is a slow glaze, which is right here. And I went to cone 6 on a slow glaze. It was, I believe it was ended up being about 15 hours because I did a preheat. 15 hours seemed like a really long time. I usually do glaze quite a bit faster than that. The preheat was kind of like 2 hours, so really it was a 13-hour glaze firing. So the reason that's important is because, the longer it takes to get to the maturing temperature, the more heat work, they say heat work, that occurred during the firing. So that ended up kind of giving me strange results. And if you notice, when it says 115, that means 115 degrees. Now this is Florida, but it's not quite that hot, even though it does feel like it sometimes. So that 115 is saying that is the ambient temperature inside the kiln right now. And yeah, it might be just a little bit warm. I unloaded this kiln this morning, but it's been about 8 hours and it's pretty much just room temperature. So why does it say 115? Well, there's something called Thermocouple Offset. This is kind of a really important thing to know, and I knew about it, but I didn't really know what to do before the glaze fire. So Thermocouple Offset is a way of making the thermocouples think it is a slightly different temperature. So you can say that it's actually set to be 18 degrees more than the actual ambient temperature inside the kiln. That's what they do, when they manufacture them. That's how they ship them out. So it's kind of up to you when you get them to figure out on your own what you want to do, and the purpose of the thermocouple offset is so that you can calibrate your kiln to an exact temperature. And of course you have to do that with your witness cones. So let's go over here. This is from my firing. All right, we have here cone 4, 5 is in the middle here, 6 and 7 right here. So with 3 zones, I needed to have 3 different sets of witness cones. As you can see, cone 4 was obliterated. Cone 5 was pretty much destroyed on each one. Now cone 6, I don't know. It's a little bit hard to tell, but it kind of looks like a pretty good cone 6. At least, you know, I never know if the little holder thing kind of changes it or not, so maybe the self-supporting ones are better. All of the cone 6s are definitely in and around where they should be. The problem is that I think in the middle, you can see this is the middle cone 7. The middle cone 7 seems to be a little bit more than what I would have expected. So, and that kind of shows up with the cone 6 that was there, which is also probably over. So this cone offset or the thermocouple offset issue probably led to this. I thought I was going to get an underfire because if it's set higher than the ambient temperature, so that would stand to reason that you're going to underfire everything. So I'm not real sure why I got what appeared to be an overfire, because we're going to go over here to the actual pieces now, which are in fact much more overfired than what I'm used to seeing. Let me see, what examples do I have? One of my glazes, which is kind of like a copper glaze, going to be kind of hard to see. That sort of brown looking glaze right there has never done that before, and I suppose it could do it if it was underfired. And notice all the wonderful pinholing that I have going on, which I've never had before. That copper glaze usually looks like this. This was in a different firing. So this little sort of test piece thing is, you know, much more of a blue turquoise, whereas of course I got this burnt out look here. I'm assuming that this overfired and didn't underfire because the witness cones are showing me that, you know, it might have been a little bit closer to a cone 7 if we go by the witness cones, which is what we should do. And this is also the copper glaze, which is kind of almost looks like wood fired or something happened to it. More gas fired looking. Not really what I was going for with it because it's a brighter color. And I also have a red clay that when it's overfired is really dark. And there it is, really dark. And this was a thin piece, so you kind of know that that would be one of the first things to overfire would be something thinner. So that's definitely much darker than what I'm used to. So I'm not really going to talk about the pieces too much that I got because, you know, I'm not going to do a kiln opening video, but everything is much darker and kind of more burnt out looking than what I'm used to. So most likely I did overfire it at cone 6. So what I think I'm going to do, sometimes if you go to glaze companies and you look at what they say, one of them, which is Kentucky Mudworks, who makes that copper glaze that I just showed you, they say to do cone 5 with a 12-degree offset. So that's what I'm going to do next time. So that's pretty much all I want to say about the glazing right now, because I'm going to have to do more testing. I just want anybody else who, you know, just anybody to know who starts with a new kiln that maybe you do have a learning curve, even if you've had kilns similar to it before. You never really quite know until you start using it. But there's definitely a learning curve going from a manual kiln to an automated one. So the kiln itself is really nice. It shipped really well. It was fairly easy to put together. It comes in 3 pieces, and you do have to put it together. And you have to, you know, take apart the front part of it, which they have great videos that tell you how to do it. So that was easy to do. The lid probably would be my only real complaint. It's a huge lid, of course. And see if we put the lid down. One nice thing is that it has a lock here, which you can, you use during the firing. So that is a nice feature. But when you get the kiln, you have to put the lid on. It has a lot of stuff back here to deal with, and it's spring loaded. It has this huge panel back here, which if you can see, there's screws here, but none here. That's because I could not get this segment to line up with the holes that are supposed to be right there. So that whole segment does not have any screws in it because it just would not line back up again. So basically that middle segment is kind of free floating and you know, probably doesn't affect anything except for the lid itself. So if we pick this up, I sort of feel like, I'm going to let the lid go back, that there is a lot of tension right here from the weight of the lid itself. And that might not seem like a big deal, but I can kind of tell how these screws here are getting a little bit sort of loose already. See that? That moves already. It's because the weight of the lid is really pulling on that. So I'm probably going to have to put something on the ceiling just to hook onto the lid to sort of support it, because I kind of feel like over time that's not going to hold up too good. So that's pretty much my main complaint with it, is just that. Probably not a big deal. And you know, the firing itself was a little bit of an issue this time, but I did expect that. Now the elements inside this kiln are different than what I have seen before, and I kind of knew that. And kiln's still turned on, and it does have an on-off right here, which is a really nice feature. So anytime you're gonna unload the kiln, you should definitely turn it off. But the kilns are set in this really strong, I don't know if it's like a really high fire material, but it is very strong, and they kind of sit in those channels, the elements do. So that's really nice, and they're known for that. That's kind of like one of their main things that people talk about, is how the elements really hold up and they don't sag because they are inside of that channel and they can't come out. So that's one of the best things about this kiln, is that it does have that, because you know how the elements can sag after a while. And this is a larger kiln. It's very deep, so it actually was pretty hard to you know, load and unload the first couple of times. I'm not used to having to almost climb in the thing to load it. But overall, I am happy with it. I just wanted to let anyone know about the whole Thermocouple Offset thing, that you do have to kind of research that and figure it out on your own. Because I don't know if L&L Kiln is one of the only ones that have that, if all of the manufacturers do that or not. But when you see that the ambient temperature is much higher than what it should be, you know that it has the Thermocouple Offset. And of course, it's in the manuals, but you just know, I just didn't really understand what I should do about it. So until you have to do the firings yourself, just to kind of get the experience to know what you're supposed to do. So basically, that's all I had to say about it this time. So next time, hopefully, it'll be more successful, and I'll do a kiln opening and talk about what's going on with the glazes and stuff once I learn how to fire this kiln. So thank you for watching, and if anybody has any questions about an L&L kiln that I can help with, I will be glad to answer it, because I know it's you know, it's a big decision when you go to buy a new kiln, to choose the right one, choose the brand that you want. And one thing about this brand that I will say, they do have a 3-year warranty, which is longer than anybody else, which was definitely a factor for me when I was trying to figure out which one to get. And I got the vent with it too, so it's all there, so it's a whole new experience. So thank you for watching.